Garrett and Kate and Michael and Greta, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay. Are we doing all right? Awesome. Well, friends, my name is Chris McKenna. I am the founder of Protect Young Eyes, and I am so excited to be joined tonight. It's one of these strange feelings. I really wish that this webinar wasn't necessary, to be perfectly honest. I wish we lived in a world where this wasn't a topic that demanded so much time and attention from so many advocates and allies and amazing people all over the world. But the truth is it does. We live in a world where just clicks away, our children are constantly confronted with hyper-sexualized messages, and pornography is not just something that is sitting there waiting for them to find, it is actively pursuing them in many of the digital places that have a lot of other good, amazing uses, and yet there it lurks. And so it demands our attention. It demands that we prepare them. It demands that we take our heads out of the sand and do something. And that is what we're doing tonight, having conversation. And I hope that that is an indicator of what I hope happens in homes all over the world who maybe watch this webinar, is open and honest conversations. We must dominate as parents and caring adults and grandparents and aunts and uncles. We must be the voice that dominates this conversation and not allow the other digital voices that want to dominate this conversation be the ones that grab the attention and the hearts and the affections of our young people. So I want to just talk a minute about each of these amazing panelists that are with me here tonight. Just as a bit of a setup, pornography is one of these issues that sits in the middle of a lot of other things that divide us. We are a world that loves to stand on either side of a chasm and yell at each other about a lot of things. And when it comes to preventing the exploitation of children, again, I wish it wasn't necessary, but it is a common ground. So I want us to set aside political differences and religious differences and other things that are easy to point at as different and say, let's agree on, regardless of where we're from, be that geographically or background wise, that we can agree on the safety and protection of our kids, and that pornography is, I will call it, an equal opportunity destroyer. Whether you are 4, 14, or 40, it corrodes the hearts and minds of all of us. And that is an agnostic position. We can agree there. That is a bipartisan position. We can agree there. And so I just want to put that out there. That's the position that I come from when it comes to this issue. And so if you think otherwise, great, send me a message. I get all kinds of hard emails all the time. They don't scare me. Send it over. I'd be happy to have a dialogue about it. But without further ado, I want to do some introductions here of Garrett, Michael, Greta, and Kate. So first with Garrett, and I'm just going to give little snippets because I need each of them to share a little bit as I get into their stories. So not long ago, Garrett, believe it or not, ran 30 marathons in 30 days to raise awareness. And that was just the beginning. Like, this guy was just getting started, and I'm going to let him tell the rest. But he feels so passionately about raising awareness that he has performed superhuman strength, endurance sort of things that just make my mind explode when I read about them. And it's that sort of motivation that is awesome, that I know is going to come through in the things he shares with us tonight as a representative of Fight the New Drug, an excellent organization that I invite you to check out. Michael Browning joining us from Ottawa, Canada, after experiencing both personal and professional struggles and the effects of those struggles on loved ones. He was inspired to provide specialized care for people who are struggling with their own or in their own family's sexual addiction. After 7 years of providing pastoral counseling, he has now opened his own counseling and psychotherapy private practice. And this list of like post-high school certifications and degrees that Michael has, the dude has more qualifications in his pinky finger than I have in my 2 thick file cabinet over here. Like, it's unbelievable. Registered psychotherapist, College of Registered Psychotherapists of Ontario, 2 graduate degrees, a master's in divinity, a master's in arts. And that's like just 3 sentences of 5. So I'm going to stop there. Highly qualified, does awesome work with families. Michael, thank you so much for being here. Kate Oseen, ally, child advocate, a passionate digital creator, an amazing marketer, and using those skills to bring awareness, if you follow her Instagram account, to awesome to issues that bring just awesome awareness to them about human trafficking, using her platform to educate and amplify, which is also the name of her podcast, preventative information to bring more awareness to the human trafficking issue and how that fuels pornography. And then Greta joining us, and that smile you see on her face, you see, that's just like Greta's smile. I love it. She is an author and nature lover, book reader, coffee drinker. She craves meaningful relationships and loves having adventures. Her faith is a lens through which she sees life. She's a second generation homeschooling mom. That's like worthy of some prize and honor and financial whatever just for doing that. That's amazing. Mom of four, wife, and passionate about educating parents about the devastating effects of pornography, which is one of the many reasons you're with us here tonight, Greta. So friends, that is what we're in for. This is going to be recorded, and this will be shared with those who have registered for this. If you watch this and you go, wow, I want someone else to see it, no problem. The recording that we capture tonight will be played on replay tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern for all of my friends in the European time zone, who this is middle of the night for them. But then it'll also be uploaded to YouTube and shared with everyone who registers through Zoom that way. So that's how we're going to get things going. Garrett, I'm going to start with you, and I want to know what your morning caffeinated drink is. How in the world does somebody wake up for 30 straight days and run 30 marathons? I want to hear a little bit about the passion behind what you chose to do, because it's pretty awesome when our passion drives us towards things, right? Things that we love. So let me hear a little bit.
Yeah, for the first 29 years of my life, I didn't really have a counter voice to pornography. The voice that I heard and the things that I was told, it was normalized. And it wasn't until I heard a counter voice, and at that point, it was, in my case, it was the counter voice was fight the new drug. And I was turning 30, and I wanted to do something to build awareness. And I knew that I was decent at endurance events, definitely not the fastest or the best at them, but I used that talent to build awareness. And the 30 marathons represented the 30 years of life, because I was about to turn 30. And then after that, I did the bike ride across the United States. And again, the goal was to build awareness, because I didn't have that counter voice in my life. And so once I had that counter voice, I wanted to be a counter voice for someone else.
You didn't just run 30 marathons. You did it while handcuffed. So let me just point that out. You didn't just ride a bike 3,800 miles across the United States. You did it while dragging chains in order to create that visual of what pornography does to us, I imagine, right? Because that's, right. I see that consistently through Fight the New Drugs messaging, right? Those chains on our brain, what it does to us neurologically, what it does to the world, what it does to relationships is literally chains, heavy chains on us. And I mean, you carried that out so tangibly, unbelievable.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
What one thing out of that was the most radical? I mean, I'm sure there was transformation just in the things that you were experiencing, but is there one experience that stands out from that series of events?
Yeah, it's kind of cool to contrast the low moments versus the high moments. And what I mean by that is, if I contrast riding my bike through the Appalachian Mountains with a bike with a chain attached to me, it was very challenging, and it felt like it was never going to end. And at day 21 of my bike ride, the chains had worn away. The carabiners that connected the chains to my bike had worn away. And so I finished the bike ride without any chains. And the significance there is you're comparing those low moments, right? The moments of fear and anxiety and depression, or whatever it is that pornography, the harmful effects that you're experiencing, to the high moments of, I fought through this. I did it in a strategic way. And, that for me was really a cool moment.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Greta, I want to go to you next. You see, and I'll say do battle against the issue of pornography, I would say at a very tactical, granular level, family to family, face to face with moms. And I'm curious why, right? I look at your book and I'll say the joyous things that you tend to focus on. pornography is not a joyous topic. I mean, it sucks the life right out of you, to be honest. It is a difficult, gritty space to do battle in. So tell me about that choice. Like, why has Greta chosen, like, mom to mom with gut-wrenching stories, decided to deal with the issue of pornography?
Okay. Am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay,
It's
good.
wonderful. Yep.
All right. Well, to be honest with you, I'm still surprised myself. I say often that I never would have chosen to be the porn lady, which is what my friends call me in jest now. This isn't a job that I would have willingly signed up for. But what I found out as I faced the prospect of my 4 kids growing up, 3 sons, 1 daughter, was they were being catapulted into a world where pornography was going to be an issue in their life at some point, whether it was while they were, preteens, teens, or adults. And I knew I needed to prepare them for that in some ways. So I began to research, I began to learn, and I began to talk to friends. And everyone either clammed up because it felt so uncomfortable and so awkward, or they said, we don't know what to do. We don't know how to talk about this. And we certainly don't know how to talk about it with our kids. And so I realized that it wasn't just my kids that I needed to help. It was kids around the world. And it was moms and dads who felt ill-prepared and afraid and scared and nauseous maybe at the thought of having had this conversation. And so just little by little, I started having a conversation until next thing I know, I was standing in front of people having a conversation and feeling all kinds of awkward, but also really actually joyful to be able to help. Even though the conversation is difficult, I am overjoyed that I can help and be a voice that maybe steps into a place where people feel really alone or unprepared.
I think you said a really important word there, Greta, and that is alone. Porn is a selfish, isolating issue that cuts you off from all the things that give life, relationships and connection and intimacy. And so as a parent, it can feel alone as a awkward topic. And I think that's what porn wants. It thrives one-on-one, doesn't it? Like it wins. As a man who struggled with porn for a long time myself, I can tell you one-on-one, whether you're 4, 14 or 40, porn wins every time. And so I'm so glad that you were there to come alongside those parents to remind them that they are not alone. And I'm guessing there are many who are listening now who will watch this, who will feel alone, and know that you aren't. Here are resources you can reach out to through any of the different ways that I'll show you towards the end to connect with the amazing panel here, be it DMs through Instagram or other places. But friends, you are not alone. You are not. I also want to remind you to drop questions in the Q&A. There's 1 or 2 that have come in already. Do that. If you have questions, don't be afraid. I'm not going to share any names. If you want it to be a little more anonymous because it is embarrassing, that's fine. But now is your chance. Kate, I want to go to you. I've had the chance to get to know you through Instagram. I have a love-hate relationship with Instagram, and I think you probably do too. It's a platform that there's sometimes I would just love to blow up because they contribute to the problem, but at the same time, it's a way for us to talk about the problem and create awareness. And so I know you have felt that tension. But if Greta is dealing more tactically, kind of one-to-one with families, in talking to you, I feel like you look a little more globally at the issue and see a system that at times is fueling that and other issues. Talk a little bit about how you got into that space. I mean, you're a marketer, and the graphics and the way that you market yourself and issues is awesome and beautiful and wonderful. As a fellow marketer, I appreciate it. So how does that turn into this issue for you, and what fuels you to keep going?
I think you brought up a great point about how you have a love-hate relationship with Instagram, because I do as well, as I do with most of the social media platforms. And to be quite honest, as a marketer, now realizing how things are marketed, how things are presented to our youth, to adult people, I realize how infiltrated these platforms are with such exploitive material, whether that be pornography, whether that be, you know, exploiting yourself on OnlyFans or camming or those sorts of things. So I've really honed in on realizing how obviously it all sounds great, right? If they want to market it, if they're monetizing this content. So that's something that I kind of realized in the beginning of my advocacy and allyship. And now I just realize that, you know, I have a voice, and regardless if I'm not a survivor or a lived experience expert, I can use my skills and my marketing to help amplify those who might either be scared to raise their voices in these platforms or mentor them in a way where their messages are amplified. Over the past, I guess, how many months or year? I guess it's been over a year, I guess, that the platform was infiltrated with a lot of misinformation and things regarding the anti-trafficking community. So a lot of the survivors and lived experience experts have struggled to try to fight that, making sure that the correct information and, you know, the messaging that is being put across is actually accurate and true. So yeah, I think just using my skills and what I can do, using my voice or amplifying others, is just a way that I've sort of created that community on my online space.
Yeah, I love that word, how it kind of permeates a lot of what you do, amplify, because those voices need that. They need a spot where they can be heard because they have so much to teach us. And for parents who are listening to this and you're going, oh my gosh, my kid has Instagram, I'm the worst parent ever. No, you're not. There's a lot of good kids who use Instagram in really good ways, but as Kate and I, and probably even Greta, who also has a really strong following on Instagram, can attest to, I have no problem saying that it is a platform that does not care about the safety and protection of your child. And so if you are going to have a child, as I do, who uses Instagram, then you must own that safe use of the app, because Instagram will not show them how. It will not default into showing them how, no matter what little bones of parental control and safety they want to show our way. It's all smoke and mirrors, in my opinion. And I'm not saying throw it away and smash their iPhone. In fact, I never promote that, because that just breaks trust with your kids. But just, you know, be careful and listen to trusted voices like Kate and the information she puts out there. Michael, you also see this at a very granular family, gut-wrenching, eye-to-eye, world falling apart level, I'm sure at times. And like a lot of awesome voices in the anti-exploitation sort of advocacy space, you do it out of, I've been there and I don't ever want to go back, and I'm going to use that experience to help others, which is a really awesome thing that you've chosen to do. Talk a little bit about how that past experience fuels your current passion for helping families who are in a really tough spot.
Thank you, Chris. I just see it as something that you do when you've worked on something for so long and it's been such a struggle, that you want to help others not to make it such a struggle for them. And for me, when I looked at going into a helping field like psychotherapy, we really just wanted to help people get free. You know, like it isn't a preventative field. Preventative field is more what our other panelists are doing, and you know, trying to get the word out to warn people and to get them to steer away from the harm that pornography can give teens and others. And so for me, it was just a matter of, well, what happens when people are already affected and they're deep inside the problem? And we use psychotherapy as a tool for that, to help heal them and bring them to freedom. We use a special approach at the Whitestone Clinic to look at the whole family. So when a person comes in with a particular problem like pornography, we don't just help that person. We see their partner as needing help. So their marriage needing help. Sometimes the kids, the whole family unit needing help. So our approach is multimodality, or a big approach from all sides, trying to help the whole unit hurt, because it's a relational disease. It's not just something in an individual, it's a relational disease. And like a lot of times when we talk to our our clients, helping them to get over what we call an intimacy disorder. And it's an intimacy disorder often fueled by pornography. Not everybody that comes to our clinic is addicted to pornography, but most of them are. And it's part of a larger problem that they present, which we're not going to talk about today mostly, but there's many other avenues that come forth from the pornography itself.
Michael, you used a couple of really strong words, and I want to come back to them because words matter. You said you attached the word disorder, intimacy disorder. So we did a webinar back in June on gaming disorder, right? So that's a very medical way to talk about a problem. So I think that's important, right? That we're talking at the medical level here. I also said an intimacy disease or a relationship disease, I think is what you said. So I've not heard that phrase before, relationship disease. Tell me a little bit about using that, like the significance of that, because when I think of disease, I'm thinking of something I'm taking a medicine for, or that's sort of, virus or bacteria or whatever. But I mean, is that really, I mean, you're relating it to that. That's really strong terminology.
I think it applies because one of the mistakes we make here, and we could even do it today, it happens, is we talk about it from the platform of pornography itself, which sort of gives the light to the pornography and not necessarily to what's going on inside the psyche or the mind of the user. And the user is the problem, really, in a sense, because they're being disordered, right, or brought into a dis-ease through their constant use of this medium. And what it does is it creates a relationship with the pornography. So I want you to, in psychology, we have a term where we call something an object, not in the same way we use object in English normally, but an object like I have a relationship with that object of pornography. And so in a sense, individuals develop a relationship, and it's disordered because pornography is not a person, and pornography is not someone to be in relationship with. So, but they develop a relationship with pornography, and what it does is it disorders their relationship with themselves and with other people, particularly their partner, but with other people. So that's why I'm using those strong words, because it is a disease in the sense that a disease is what is the malfunctioning of what would otherwise be a healthy host or a healthy being. And so if it's not healthy to be in relationship with an object like pornography, then it's a disease, right? So I think that's why I'm using the language.
Is really powerful. I mean, the way that you've kind of parsed things out, that it causes dis-ease. Here, I'm 46, and I've never really thought of the word disease in that way, but that's really what it does, and how an accurate way to describe the disruption that pornography causes in those relationships. Wow, that's really powerful. Garrett, I want to circle back to you for just a minute. So a mom comes to you and says, Garrett, my 13-year-old son is addicted to pornography. Now, I'm not going to argue, and we could have a medical conversation around addiction or not. I'm not interested in that right now. This is what mom says to you. My 13-year-old son is addicted to pornography. What is it that you might say to that mom? And I'm going to have others jump into that too, because I know these are conversations that many of you have had. But what would you say to that mom as a first step?
I think that the first question I would ask is, when she uses the word addiction, why is she using that word? I think that when it comes to how to address someone who has a challenge with pornography, there's do's and there's don'ts of do this and also the don't do this. And I think one thing that's important is to not label something an addiction without it being an addiction. So I guess one of the first things would be to not diagnose if you're not qualified to diagnose, because addiction is a strong word and it can be a very heavy thing. And I think for a 13-year-old, when that 13-year-old thinks of the word addiction, I think that it probably creates some anxiety within that individual. And I would assume that it also creates some shame, and that person will start to label themselves as addicted or as a bad person or as a fault. They have a fault within them. So
yeah, that's really powerful, because I think it's easy as a parent, and this is where in my presentations, you try to make them smile a little bit, because the room can get really heavy, and I make them all repeat after me: don't freak out, don't freak out, don't freak out, don't freak out, like 4 times. Like, after I've made them say the word pornography out loud, which makes them all giggle a little bit, I'm like, no, just say it. It's a word, say it. If you can't say it, your kids can't say it. But it is kind of convincing us to receive them with that grace and understanding, to combat that little shame-filled voice that we kind of carry around that tells us we're bad, we've done something horrible. They probably already know that. I guarantee if they've come to you, they already know that. And so what you're pointing towards is that, what we like to say is, do your kids know beyond any doubt that they can, regardless of the issue, land safely and softly with you? Yeah. And I think you're trying to point toward that. Are you a parent, a grandparent, a caring adult who, through conversations or just through your facial expressions, through your posture, creates that safe place for them to land in that moment? That is a really, really important thing that you're pointing to there. That's huge.
Yeah, I think
now, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I just want to acknowledge how tough it can be. I'm a parent myself, and so I know how much love can fill your heart for the kids that you care for, whether you're a parent or grandparent or any other type of situation. And so those emotions, the love, how do we, that can come out in healthy ways, and then it can come out in like a protective, overprotective, and come out across as shame, kind of like what you're saying. So I love the phrase you use, don't freak out. Is that what you said?
Yeah, don't freak out. They have to say it 4 times to make them believe it. It's more that they believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And Greta, I'm sure you get some of that too. Do you have any like first words? I mean, how many times have you had a parent come to you and say, my 12-year-old did this, or my 14-year-old did this, or I caught my son or daughter? I am more and more convinced that this is almost an equal gender issue. I can't tell you how many, it's so far beyond just a guy thing. So what are some of the first things that you say to families? Because I'm sure by now you've tried to sort of hone the first things that you say. It's happened so many times. So what's that look like for you?
Well, I'm similar to you. I tell them don't freak out, but I also really encourage them to physically embrace their child, to touch them, to say, honey, I am so sorry this happened. This is not the way sex is supposed to be. If they're of an age where they understand that that's what they're even seeing. And I want to help you, because that diffuses the situation, and it lets your kid know that what happened isn't something that is causing you anger and frustration, fear or judgment, even if you're feeling those things yourself, because it's very natural as a parent to feel angry, scared, frustrated, betrayed. You might even have your own personal trauma you're working through as your kid comes to you and says, this is what has happened, or you discover it on your own. They haven't even come to you. So even if you feel those things inside, if you can step past them and instead just embrace your child, you can say, I'm so sorry. I want to help you, honey. And it brings your kids to you, because I think when we react with compassion to our kids, compassion pulls people together, and that's what we want more than anything else. Because like you said earlier, Chris, pornography makes us feel alone. Like it thrives on that, right? And instead, if we can take that that feeling of being alone that your kid is experiencing and break that and pull them to us with our compassion, with our understanding, with our care, with our desire to help them when they're hurting, then that's a first step towards healing. And so those are some of the things that I encourage parents to do when their child comes to them, or like I said, when they make the discovery themselves.
That's really powerful, just to remind them of what a ordered relationship looks like, that I still love you, right? Come to me. And that's a powerful gesture, right? To make a connection where porn wants to rupture, that connection. So that's really powerful. Kate, recently you created on Instagram a couple of unfortunately, Instagram limits you to 10. I think you would have put all 20 panels in one post if you could have. But you have some really important tactical things that you would say to parents who want to put up some boundaries, protective digital boundaries when it comes to preventing some of these exposures. Not that I'm asking you to reel off all 20 of them that were in that carousel, but can you remember just a few of those kind of practical sort of technical things that you would say to parents to do as much as possible to prevent some of these exposures?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Did you say Kate or Greta?
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Who knows at this point? So thank you for asking for clarification. Kate, I wanted to talk to you. And Greta, if you got something afterwards, by all means, jump in. But Kate, go ahead.
Okay. So I think first and foremost is to be involved in what your child is doing. I feel like, and this is obviously my opinion, is that oftentimes these smart devices are used as babysitters at times. So I think that being involved with what your child is doing in those online spaces, whether that be on a Nintendo DS or, Fortnite is a big thing right now. So being involved with them and what they're doing and seeing if they want to be more in a common area of where you are, so that you're obviously seeing what is kind of happening on these different devices. And then obviously there are parental controls and different filtering softwares, but we know that kids find their way around those things. But yeah, definitely supervising younger children when they're online and having those different relationships with your children and personal boundaries. And if they are of age, I feel like it's really important to introduce the subject of grooming and how that occurs online, how that is more obviously rampant in this current climate due to the pandemic, because all of these kids are online due to schools being out. So I think dependent on the age, I think a topic of grooming and how there are people that will try to gain trust from you. You don't know if they're actually a child. They could be, an adult posing as a child, a peer of yours from like a sports team that you've been on. So I think just having that transparency of how those things can happen and how you want to educate them and give them the knowledge of what to do in those specific instances if they were to be targeted online by someone.
Yeah, that's really good, practical. And what you're pointing towards is that connection between predatory behavior and pornography, that are issues that feed each other. And I've seen this over and over again with platforms. I often refer to Instagram as the trailhead, but Snapchat is the destination, if I could use a sort of an adventure sort of illustration here, right? Why? Because I can DM and it's more evergreen in the interactions that happen on Instagram. I have a bio and other links and things that I can do on Instagram to say, hey, come follow me. And then you take them to Snapchat where things disappear. And I mean, having sat across from Snapchat executives in DC, I can tell you they guard that information. And so to get what happens in Snapchat, that's really tough. And we see it all the time in the news. And so there is a very connected, almost symbiotic relationship that can exist between those two issues, not for every kid. Again, this isn't a smash your iPhone because you're freaked out because of it. It creates conversation, which I think many of you have pointed towards, which is really, really healthy. But make no mistake that those issues are related. As you know, even Kate, you've seen play out when it comes to the issue of trafficking there. So go ahead. Did you have something else that you wanted to offer there?
I think I just kind of wanted to expand on what you said about taking kids in online space, whether that be Fortnite, and then getting them onto Discourse or Twitch or Snapchat or Instagram. I've heard a few stories of young boys being targeted. Obviously, we know that Fortnite is a game that is very popular right now. And the predators or the offenders or whoever it might be that is targeting these children know that. So they'll use that like V-Bucks, those sorts of things, saying, hey, message me on this other chat room. I'll send you a gift card for V-Bucks. And then they go to the chat and then they're like, hey, if you want those V-Bucks, do you want to send me a picture of yourself? If you're uncomfortable, I can send a picture of myself to make it seem like it's more comfortable. So that is occurring online. So I just wanted to kind of add that because I've heard personally from 2 people say that that has happened to their kids. So I think it's just really important that we may think that Fortnite is obviously for children, but if we know how things work within offenders, they'll find their ways to target your children. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, no, you're right. And there's a lot of covert ways that those things can happen. I just dropped a link in the chat for Discord, which is probably the most popular app, social media platform that parents don't know anything about. And so when it comes to those communications that can then lead to, you're pointing towards an issue of sextortion. If you're not familiar with that term, families, that's the, it is what it says it is, right? That now I have something, this intimate photo of yours, and I'm going to show all of your family and everything unless you go get mom's credit card and send me a lot of money. So that's a real issue that we have written about, that it's great to raise some awareness about that. So thank you. Thank you, Kate. I didn't want it, Greta, if you had something to offer on that more tactical side, when I confusingly called on neither of you, I'd be happy to have you jump in there. Do you have any kind of tactical things that you share from the kind of the technical side, be it on the parental control side, anything like that that you often share when it comes to this issue?
Oh, I think Kate summed it up so well. I'm sure I could think of something, but not off at the top of my head to add to what she said. It's fantastic.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I'm going to see here. Apparently the tech guy here doesn't know how to use Zoom, because when I put the link in, I didn't send it to everyone. I only sent it to the co-hosts here. So that was my mistake. That's why when I said there was a link, I created some confusion. Everybody should see it now. Friends, I'm going to go to the Q&A. We've had some really big questions dropped into the Q&A here that I want to point out here. And, Michael, I'm going to address this one directly to you, if that's okay. From a mom here, my 23-year-old son is addicted to porn. How can I best support him?
Okay, good question. And similar to what some were saying on the panel, you need to approach it carefully with somebody who has the struggle. One is, it's back to what Garrett was saying, you can't necessarily say it's addiction until the person's really tried to stop, right? If they've really tried to stop and they can't, you're now into a different category. And then second thing I would say is similar to what Greta was saying, is I'm so sorry this happened to you. It's more like not that you've done wrong, but you've been wronged. Okay. And so now I want to help you. I'm here to help you. I'm not here to condemn you. I'm here to help you. So the approach is pretty much everything. But you do need something from the person who's suffering. They need some acknowledgement that they have tried and cannot stop this on their own. That's where they mostly need to get to before they're going to be able to be helped. Most people, to be perfectly blunt, try multiple times on their own, unsuccessfully, many of them. And they're embarrassed from that. They're shocked by that. And let's be honest, mom doesn't know unless she's found out, right? So there's a bit of a shock value that the person's gone through, that they've been discovered. So I would suggest that if you see this person's reached that point, they probably need some form of counseling, or at least a sort of support group. And there are many different online support groups that you can also get to help you with that. On the more secular side, like NoFap, to many different churches providing the different versions of support groups as well. But you definitely need some kind of help from outside yourself. Addiction is a disease of the individual, of isolation. Recovery happens through community. So recovery requires community, and that's the thing. So what are you doing when you've helped that person access resources, other people outside themselves, is you've helped them break the isolation hold that pornography has on them. they can then bust the shame. A lot of our group therapy is really about shame busting, busting the shame so that they don't keep returning. A lot of times it's the shame of a failure or a setback that puts the person back into a spin, back into going into the secrecy of their behaviors. So I would say to that mom, approach it gently, approach it supportively, help them find resources online or in our local community, and be there as a support. But moms can't be the accountability partner in the end. Okay, they need to get them into a resource group, therapy or something where they can, other persons can be the accountability partner. Last thing you want is the young man to be going, Mom, I looked at pornography today. This is what I looked at, that kind of thing. Mom doesn't need to know that, but mom needs to know that they are accessing resources and they are being helped.
That's a really important point that you've made there. And where I do work at Covenant Eyes, we say the same thing to spouses, most often wives who are married to a porn addicted husband, that they cannot effectively be the ally in that relationship without reliving their trauma report after report after report. So it's that knowledge that it's cared for, that there is somebody who is dealing with it, that, as you said, even whether it's a mom or another, is healthy for the relationship, because there's trauma all around. I'm sure that mom is dealing with a bit of just, shame herself. How can I let this happen to my son? And every time he comes back to her, she could relapse into that. Well, I screwed up, and it just, the cycle continues. So
Yeah.
that's a really important point that I don't want to gloss over that you said right at the end there, Michael.
Yeah, the important thing is not to make it about yourself, right? Which we might do unknowingly, to make it about, well, look at this hurts me or this offends me. Like, you have every right to say that, but if you're going to help the person who has the struggle, you need to basically say, you have a problem you cannot get out of on your own. If you don't find the resources that you're looking to help you, then like that's on you, right? So one of the things I say, especially around addiction, because I'm a certified sex addiction therapist, I would say, you may not be responsible for having fallen into the addiction, but once you have an addiction and you realize it, you are responsible to start getting out. And that means reaching out to other people. And that's where the encouragement kind of comes from the parent's point of view. But don't make it about the wound. See, guilting, that kind of thing doesn't work. Guilting becomes a motivation to numb feelings. And that's what porn does. Porn helps you numb your feelings. So you're almost encouraging the person to return to their numbing methods. Okay. But if you're not trying to guilt them, you're just saying, hey, I'm really concerned for you. This is really taking away from your life, your energy, your sexuality. You should get some help for this. And I'll support you by helping you find resources and that kind of thing. That's all you can do.
Thank you, Michael. Greta, you're unmuted. Did you want to offer anything on that, or you're good? Just wanted to make sure. Okay. There have been some really tough things shared here in the Q&A. There's one here that I'm going to share out loud, just as a reminder of the devastation here. Both my husband and son are addicted to porn. My husband and I are now separated, and my son preferred to live with his father because he lets him have his laptop in his bedroom and no online restrictions. I've lost my family over this, and I am completely devastated. Neither will agree to go to counseling for porn addiction. There's no willingness there to step forward, as you've said, Michael. And so this family has been just completely crushed by this. I hate reading these things, because at the same time, I think we need to be reminded, and if your kids are young, may it be a motivation to have these conversations early. As parents will often say to me, Chris, what's the right age to talk to my kids about pornography? And I have them all come up with a number. And then I'll say, okay, you've got a number, good. Now subtract 3, and that's probably the right spot. Because I want multiple years of your perspective in their mind, in their thinking, when they come up against this super normal stimulus called pornography that will do everything in its power to override their little itty bitty prefrontal cortex is going to kind of whisper no, right? And so get in front of it and talk about it early and often, and to, try to prevent, as much of it as we can. So that's good. Garrett, I'm curious, you've done some superhuman things. So what comes next? What is some of the fruit that has come out of that experience? Do you have something next on your horizon? We do have a couple other things in the Q&A here I'll come back to in just a minute, but after doing some of those things, what's next for you?
Well, I don't have any type of event that's planned out. I just really want to, again, be the counter voice, because their pornography is normalized, and for the parents and other caregivers in the watching this today, it's, if you look at some stats, it's very common for kids to run across pornography unintentionally. And for me, it's not that I have another event that I'm going to do, but I just enjoy being part of the solution. And when I say I enjoy it, just like you said at the beginning of this, obviously we wish we didn't have to have this conversation, but we do. So to answer your question, I'm sorry to disappoint you, Chris, but I don't have any events.
No. I don't know where you would go from here. I mean, would you like try to pogo stick to the moon or something? I don't know what you could do next, to be perfectly honest, but you have enough conversations and you've seen enough heartache around this, and you're a dad trying to raise, children of your own around this. What would you say? And I know Fight the New Drug deals in this space all the time, because you tend to attract, say, a teenage, young adult sort of audience that maybe is looking for, I'll say, a more quantified, scientific, prove it to me kind of perspective on pornography. What would you say to an older teen who just thinks porn's no big deal? It's everywhere. I see it. It's my friends look at it. It's no big deal. What would you say in as non-judgmental a way as possible, right, to someone who thinks it's no big deal, who's a 16 or 17-year-old?
I think if I had to break it down to one phrase, it would be consider before consuming, because there are a lot of there's a lot of research, and there's a lot of personal accounts showing the harmful effects of pornography. And so again, I think going back to that phrase, consider before consuming, because we make a lot of decisions as human beings, and we consider the consequences. But sometimes when it comes to teens and pornography, oftentimes they're not seeing those potential consequences that can arise in the moment and also in the future. So
that's really powerful. And I think that's also something that is covered, kind of that angle on things is often covered in Fight the New Drugs podcast, if families are interested in listening to some really good interviews that can be an inroads into that teen who's like, don't come at me with another sort of moral argument. Just why is it bad? And they sometimes need that secular approach. And I get that. I mean, I do a lot of work in public schools too. And Fight the New Drug does such a fabulous, brilliant job of that, I want parents to know that resource exists. Here's someone who shared, how can I help my 14-year-old daughter who watched porn for a whole year, not watching it anymore, but still having recurring nightmares about it and flashbacks of it during the day? FYI, she came to me asking for help because she was watching it through Instagram. There we go, Kate, right? So, Michael, I think I'm going to point to you just from the kind of the nightmares perspective. There are some signs that I will talk to parents about, right? We often have parental pride that gets in the way of us saying, yeah, my kid needs counseling. We try to fix it ourselves. We want to kind of deal with it in-house. This seems to be pointing towards a sign where this is maybe above the parent pay grade of the thing that we can fix. Are there other things that you would say fall into that category in terms of attributes, or what would you say specifically to this mama for her daughter and what she's dealing with?
Well, I mean, there's probably a lot more context to the whole story, but one thing I would say, when you have recurring nightmares and so on, you have a possibility of a PTSD scenario. Now, in the old days, I mean, I'm talking back in the 70s and the 80s, and all that. A lot of people that develop problems or had traumas as childhood abuse, like it was a thing done to them by a family member or friend of the family or something. Nowadays, we're seeing most of the trauma coming from viewing pornography. So pornography itself becomes the window to an abuse. And it's not a surprise when you think about the context of these pornography scenes, right? I mean, the stereotypical man on woman type pornography is very brutal and almost non-consenting in its appearance. And so you can imagine if your first window into adult human sexuality is a rough, violent type of scene, you've just witnessed a trauma and you become traumatized yourself. So if you've seen this multiple times over a year and now you're having recurrent nightmares over it, that's a probable sign of someone with PTSD. And PTSD is something that needs professional treatment. So a parent they can be supportive, but they can't necessarily treat them, just like you wouldn't set your child's broken bone, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's powerful. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah. No, I just want to really encourage parents who are in that position. You know, there's a distinct difference between, okay, my child had a problem viewing porn, and what are the after effects of my child viewing porn? For some people, unfortunately, it leads to peer-to-peer abuse. So experimentation, that kind of thing, of a teenager on other teenagers or younger siblings or that kind of thing. That does occur. And it's because you have people who are imitating what they're viewing on the screen. So it's a very serious issue. And if you see signs of it, things progressing beyond just watching it on the screen, you got to get extra help for that. You got to go outside the home. We at Whitestone Clinic, we have Daniel Gilman as a speaker for us, who goes around to churches and other places and political places and so on, and he speaks from almost like an allyship perspective of the ill effects on people because of pornography. It's sort of our effort at trying to do something preventative. But most of the time, what we're trying to tell people is watch for the abuse in the home that can come from pornography. It could be the trauma, like they said, like with this particular scenario, or it can actually be experimentations of the children acting out what they've seen on the screen.
That's right. Yeah, we've written about that, Michael, the peer-on-peer sexual abuse that we have seen increase so rapidly. And what I want to tell parents over and over again is this isn't a bad kid issue. It's good kids with brains that are susceptible to a stimulus. And when they see porn, they're like tactile, gross motor skills want to do porn. And there's ways in their brain that they're just kind of wired to do that. We see kids mimic stuff all the time. They mimic all of our bad behaviors, don't they? And so it is very important to prevent those early accidental exposures, which is why we work so hard on the advocacy side at Protect Young Eyes to try to create laws that work towards default controls. This isn't rocket science. I'm not asking for Apple or anybody else to radically change their operating system. I'm just saying, hey, if the Apple ID says it's a kid, then turn some stuff on. Like, don't we treat kids that way in every other physical space, like bikes and helmets and everything, playgrounds, right? If you know it's a kid, then just turn on some controls. Why? It's not because we're trying to create a nanny state or, censor or try to get in your business. We know that when young kids see porn, it impacts them. I have a friend of mine in therapy who talks about people being exposed to information and content ahead of schedule. And what he's referring to is that neurologically, we're intended to experience certain things on a certain maturity schedule. And when your templates are shaped by things ahead of schedule, that's extremely difficult to undo. And I think that's what you're pointing towards. So technically, we point towards getting a good router, right? Block as much of the junk as possible. Some of those technical solutions, getting great controls on the phone, whether it's Covenant Eyes or Bark or Canopy or whatever it might be. We have a lot of those solutions too. But to prevent that early exposure is so is so critical. You pointed towards something too, and Greta, maybe, I don't know if you've ever run into this in any of the talks. I have a comment here. As a follow-up to the term addiction, is there any level of normal or non-harmful viewing of porn? Have you ever had anybody come up to you during a talk and say, hey, is a little bit of porn okay? Is that anything? You and I didn't practice this, so again, I'm kind of putting my panel here on the spot. If that's not something you've run into, let me know. But have you ever dealt with that question in your live talks? I know that I have.
Yes, I have. And I don't have a problem saying that I don't think it's okay, because pornography is all about using another person. It's not about the way I think a sexual relationship is supposed to flourish, which is where there is mutual respect and enjoyment and mutual fulfilling of each other. Instead, pornography is about using the other person for your gain. And so when we look at a situation like that, we can't say that it's okay, because we want to have a situation, especially when it's one that is so intimate, and it's the most intimate relationship that exists, and we want it to be based on respect and care for the other person. And like we all know, like Michael just pointed out, pornography isn't about that. And so I think culture wants to tell us that it's okay. One thing I say to parents over and over again is that we have to understand our kids are growing up in a pornified culture, a culture that says it's no big deal. It's even a joke. It's funny. Everybody does it. All these things that we're being told, that our kids are being told about pornography. And we have to fight back against that, because it's not true. Instead, we need to say there's something better.
There is. That is a beautiful word. Doug, who works with me at Protect Young Eyes, he's working on a blog post right now about the 5 lies that porn teaches teens. And it lines up with what you've said there. That's really good, Greta. Thank you. Really direct comment here. This is worthy of an Instagram post. It says, that's like asking, is an hour of raping a week okay, or an hour of trafficking a week okay? And that's, might as well call it what it is, right? And I just think that's really powerful. What I'm going to do right now, for those that are watching, there are a few pretty intense questions here in the Q&A that I am going to address directly, kind of one-on-one. For those that are registered here, I do have your email address from that registration on Zoom. So instead of doing those live here for a couple of them, I am going to respond, and I will respond to those that are left here in the Q&A. I want to share my screen for just a minute, just so that I want to point towards the awesome resources that are available. So this is Kate's website here, kateoseen.com, and you can see just a sample of some of the awesome information that she has here. Here's her Amplify podcast. She's based in Canada, but here's the Human Trafficking in the United States hotline, Canadian Human Trafficking hotline. For those that are not familiar with Garrett's affiliation, here's Fight the New Drug. Tons of content. You got to get down into resources here. There's so much content that you can get lost for days reading what's all there. If you want an awesome way to build relationship so that porn doesn't even seem attractive, then read Greta's book here about adventuring and doing life together as a family, adventuring together. And I think if I have, read your Instagram post, this may not be the only book in your repertoire here in the near future, if I'm right. So I wanted to point towards that. And of course, Michael, you have the clinic that you've started there based in Canada. I don't know if anybody is in geographic proximity to you, but they can find you through, if they had a question, can they drop that in through an inquiry form or anything, just based if you've said something that kind of resonated with them? What would be the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, visit the whitestone.clinic. That's the website, whitestone.clinic. And you can hit our main email there at contact@Whitestone
Excellent.
Clinic.
That was a real risk there. Me typing in a web URL live in front of a lot of people, hoping I don't hit a wrong, word or something that a porn company has hijacked. So
Yeah,
there it
you
is.
never know. Right.
Whitestone.clinic. So I just wanted to point towards some of those resources in the panel here. So friends, it is 9:01. I want to stay true to the time. This recording will be captured. It'll be shared with those of you who have registered. Please share it freely. I want it to be available. And if you do have questions for any of Garrett, Kate, Michael, or Greta, please reach out to them. I know from the relationship that I have with them that they would be more than happy to help. This is a gritty space. It is tough. What you have here is a lot of longevity, right? It's hard to last in this space. And so I just want to say thank you so much for what the four of you bring to families, to give them a little bit of hope, to make them not feel alone, and to reconnect where porn has done so much to disconnect. So thank you so much for the hard work that you do. And for friends and family who are listening, you are not alone. Reach out. If there's any little nudge that you're feeling right now, I guarantee that in a few hours, it'll feel less urgent and the busyness of life will take over, and then you won't act on it. Do it now. Act now. If you've got a question, a concern, reach out to one of us now through the website or whatever, a DM to Kate or a DM to me or to Greta, whatever. We will do our best to help in this moment as you feel prompted, because those little, urges matter. I can tell you those little urges really, they matter to act on them. So if, a parent, whatever you are, in whatever role you have with young people, get the help that you need. So thank you so much, panel, for being with us tonight. I am going to turn off my camera for just a minute so I can download the chat to email some, but for everybody else, the webinar is finished. I hope you have a good night, day, morning, wherever you are. Take care.
Thanks, Chris. Bye, guys.
Good night.